Welcome to Caregivers Haven podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping families who are caregivers of a loved one with a mental illness gain peace of mind. Even though this is a podcast focused on family caregivers of the mentally ill, much of the discussion can be helpful to any caregiver. Your host is Sandra, your caregiver nurse consultant who, as a family caregiver, shares her passion for helping others and her lived experiences as a caregiver to provide education, support, and resources to other families. Sandra is a registered nurse, and many of her guests are healthcare professionals. However, this is not a professional podcast, nor will be associated with any mental health counseling or medical doctor. Please seek help with a professional provider if needed.
Hey caregivers, how are you? How are you doing with your 3 R's? Are you resting, relaxing, and rejuvenating? Remember, you have to take time for yourself so that you can continue to take care of your loved one. So how's it going? We're almost to the end of the year. We still have 2 more holidays to enjoy. We just started winter season, so I'm just checking in to see how you're doing. I know that the holidays can be very stressful for some people, and also the fall and winter months can be very stressful. And we're in the middle of a pandemic, so it's quite a bit going on. And a lot of people have anxiety during this time. And I had about 3 conversations over the Thanksgiving holiday, and then I had a recent conversation with my daughter that just reminded me that a lot of people have a lot of anxiety during this time. And so even though we only have 2 more holidays, we're right deep in the holiday season. Is almost over. We still have a few more months of winter. And so I just wanted to take some time out to just discuss the holiday stress and the seasonal stress, and just kind of talk about it and give you guys some tips, excuse me, to deal with it, some tips and strategies to deal with it. I just want to talk about it because some people really do struggle during this time of year. So that's what this podcast is all about today. I just thought here at Caregivers Haven podcast, we can just go ahead and talk about it, even though it's almost over. There are some people who are still really struggling. So the first conversation I had was with my husband. It was a day before Thanksgiving. And so usually on Thanksgiving, we go to my sister's house every year. It was kind of traditional where my sister did Thanksgiving and we did Christmas. And of course, we can't this year. There's a pandemic. So we set up some time to do a Zoom family call, and we were just all going to have a prayer together. Now, a lot of my family's on the East Coast, so of course, they would probably have already eaten dinner by the time we did the call, but it was okay. We just all wanted to get together and be together and have this big prayer time with everybody. And so the night before, I was just reminding my husband that we were doing this Zoom call, and that we were going to have prayer time, and did he already have his prayer ready? And he's like, so I'm praying? And I was like, well, yeah. And he goes, well, you didn't tell me that I was praying. And I was like, oh, sorry, I didn't tell you because you always do it. So I just assumed that you were going to do it. And he just got really quiet. I saw a lot of hesitation. And so I said, well, do you not want to do it? He's like, I'll do it. And I'm like, but if you don't want to, just tell me that you don't want to. There's someone else who can do it. There's other people who can pray. And he was just really quiet. And I said, well, why don't you just think about it and let me know in the morning? But I went to bed thinking, man, I wonder why he doesn't want to pray. He's always the one who prays. And then I started thinking, most of you guys know that he had COVID this year, and he had some damage to his vocal cords and his trachea. And so his voice is it gets very gravelly and hoarse. And sometimes he can't speak very loud. So I was thinking, oh, maybe that's why. Maybe he doesn't want to pray because of his voice sometimes gets too weak. But then I thought about it and I was like, really, it doesn't even matter why he doesn't want to do it. If he doesn't want to do it, he should have the right to say no. So anyway, the next morning we get up and we talk about it again, and he does tell me that he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't feel up to doing it. And so I said, no problem. Someone else can do it. And so we all got together that day as a family, and we had the prayer. And guess what? The earth didn't fall off the sky and crash. No stars fell from the sky and caught on fire. No one said, I wonder why Jeff isn't praying, or, hey, Jeff, we want you to pray. No one said anything. It was fine. Everything turned out fine. He said no, and everything turned out fine. And I just felt bad because it's tradition. He didn't feel comfortable saying no. And I think we put a lot of pressure on people because of tradition, or because that's how it's always done, or because this person's always done it, not realizing that it could be creating anxiety in that person, and they don't want to cause a problem or let people down and not say no. So, it's okay to say no, even if it is a tradition. And, I'm saying all this, but I'm just like my husband. We are both givers and like to serve people and like to help people. And so a lot of times with that comes the difficulty of saying no, because you don't want to let people down. You don't want to hurt people. And it's only been in the last year to year and a half that I have been working on that myself and trying to get better at it, which is probably why I recognized that he was kind of struggling with it. Because if I hadn't been working on this issue myself, I probably wouldn't have even recognized that he was feeling a little anxious about it. So, just it's okay to say no, people, during the holidays or any time of the year. So the second conversation I had also involved this same Thanksgiving Day. And this conversation was with my brother. So my brother, historically or traditionally, however you want to look at it, either doesn't show up for the big family gatherings, or he comes really late when it's about to end, or he'll come, but he'll just stay like a really short time and then leave. And I can't say over the last few years it has improved, but what's interesting is that it's what he told me after this Zoom meeting that day. But I mean, I'm talking like about 30 years, and I feel really, really bad because this whole time, me and my sisters would always fuss like, why does he do that? Where is it that he goes? Why doesn't he want to be here with us? We were taking it personally and saying little things. And even all the nieces and nephews would be like, where's Uncle Mike? Is Uncle Mike coming? When they were younger. Now that they're older, they know his pattern. They'll just be like, oh, yay, Uncle Mike is here. Or, oh, Uncle Mike stayed a long time this time. It's literally been the conversation in our family, for all these years. And again, I feel really, really bad about it because, I feel bad about it because we just assumed that he didn't want to be with us, but that's not always the case. So this year, this year, like I said earlier, because of COVID, we did a Zoom call, and he was on the call, and he called me the next day, because the Zoom call is really good because I have a new grandbaby that a lot of people hadn't seen, and all the grandkids are on. Like I said, like I think it was like 3 or 4 different states. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 3 different states all on the call, and so it was really nice. And my daughter, after the call, she was like, did you notice that Uncle Mike was the first one on the Zoom call? And I was like, yeah, I did notice that. And he was the last one to get off the call. He was the last one to hang up. And so we were so excited. We were just talking about how it was just so excited to have him there. So the next day, my brother calls and he tells me how much he enjoyed the call. And he said, it's too bad we can't do something like that all the time instead of all getting together. And he was so happy to see all the kids and everything. And then towards the end of the call, he said, there's something I've never told you. And I was like, what? Me and my brother talk all the time. Like, me and my siblings were all really close and we all talk. And it's kind of funny because there's a couple of us who tell when they're not supposed to tell. So we literally all know each other's business. Like we all know each other very, very well. So I was surprised that he was going to tell me something that I didn't know. And I said, what? What's that? What's up? And he said, the holidays stress me out. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, that's why I don't be showing up, all the time. And sometimes I just be trying to figure out what to bring or what gifts to get. And I just end up just not coming. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I was so shocked. I had no idea. I know my brother very, very well. And I'm telling you, that's the last thing that I thought would be the reason why he wasn't coming around. And and then I started feeling really, really guilty about how we would always be complaining, and then we would always be like giving him pressure, like, why don't you come? And you need to come. And mom's asking for you, blowing his phone up, like, mom's asking for you. What time are you coming? And doing all that when all this time the guy was stressed out. The holidays were stressing him out. And oh my gosh, I felt so bad. And I contemplated on that like all day after I talked to him. And I just realized how a lot of times we assume. So, with my husband, we all just assume he wants to say the prayer. And with my brother, we were assuming that he didn't want to come. He didn't want to be around. So that between those two conversations I had right at Thanksgiving, and both of them really, really surprised me and really opened my eyes to this whole holiday stress thing. And then the third conversation I had was, remember I told you that I had like 3 conversations that kind of prompted me to do this podcast today. And the third conversation was with my loved one's psychiatrist. And so we go to the appointment, and his early December appointment, and the psychiatrist says, okay, everything's good. I just want you to keep an eye out for any changes and let me know right away. And I was like, okay, yeah, we always do. He goes, yeah, but it's the season. It's the holiday season, and it's the fall and winter season, and people like struggle this time of year. And I said, well, my family member doesn't have to do like any shopping or worry about anything. So they, there's no reason really for them to get stressed. And the psychiatrist said, oh no, it doesn't matter if they have stress or not. People just simply get overwhelmed this time of year. There's so much hustle and bustle going on and so much busyness. And then also the seasons, the weather, decreased sun. There's a lot of things that are going on that can still cause them stress, whether it's stress that it may not be stress that you think is stressing them out, but they could be getting stressed out. And I was like, wow, okay, I will watch out. And he said that even, and he also brought up, just really enforcing me about the weather to make sure that they get some sun. And I was like, okay. And it kind of reminded me, I remember a chiropractor told me before that a lot of people kind of just poo-poo the weather, like, oh, it's sunny, oh, it's cloudy. But he said that when the weather and the seasons change, that there's a lot of stuff going on. And I just thought, it was just a chiropractor telling his chiropractor stories, but he was telling me that there's an actual change in the atmospheric pressure and, the moon, like all of these things really do cause change. He was telling me all this because I was having a lot of joint pain, and I said, oh, it's probably because it's cold. And he goes, sometimes it's not just the cold, it's the time of the year where there's an atmospheric pressure change and it can cause pain in the joints. And so anyway, I thought about all that as the psychiatrist was telling me all of this. And so I was like, okay. And the other thing I thought about is, during this pandemic, we've been staying at home a lot. And I remember back in March, April, when I was quarantined, when we were all sick, and then for a long time, I didn't go to the store. And so I remember the first time I went to the store, it was like a shock. Like I walked in the store and it just seemed so bright and the music seemed so loud and it just seemed like so many people. And I don't really get anxiety. Stuff doesn't bother me, but I just remember walking in and feeling that. And I just thought about people who have anxiety, like how, if this is how they feel, I was like, wow, this is a lot, this is a lot to deal with, a lot to handle. So anyway, long story short, I told him that, I'd watch out for any signs of, any kind of signs for depression or anything like that because of all the holiday busyness and the seasons. And so those were all conversations that I had like around Thanksgiving, beginning of December. And then last week I had a talk with my daughter because she deals with anxiety and depression sometimes also. And she was telling me that she was starting to feel down and she thought maybe it was her vitamin D level because she lives in Oregon, and during fall and winter they can go like days and weeks without having any sun. And so the good thing about it is, she took action by calling the doctor and was asking them to get a vitamin D level just so that she can get checked. Because one of the things that she and I were talking about, and also the psychiatrist was telling me about, is the seasonal depression that it really affects people. And I don't know if a lot of you guys know, but seasonal depression is an actual diagnosis. It comes under the umbrella of depression, but it's one of the specifiers for depression. I think it's called seasonal affective disorder. So it's an actual disorder, and people like really struggle with it. So anyway, she's getting her vitamin D level, because sometimes people have to take like a supplement to help with their vitamin D, since there's not a lot of sun during that time. So you're probably wondering, why am I telling you all these stories? Just a whole bunch of stories, but there is a point to it. There is a point that I'm getting at. One of the points is, we all should be aware that all of these things are going on, and because of that, we can help each other out. We can help each other do better during this time, and hopefully decrease the anxiety within ourselves and with other people. And so one of the things, I just want to give you guys some tips to try to help you through it. And one of the things that I hope COVID has taught everybody is to slow down a little bit. I personally feel, and anybody who knows me is going to think it's ironic that I'm saying this, because I have pretty much lived my life completely opposite this, but I have learned the hard way in the last 2 years about slowing down. And I hope you guys don't have to wait till you're as old as me to learn this lesson. But I just feel like the key to life, not just life, but the key to life, the key to health, the key to our mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional status is balance. We have to, everything should be done in moderation, and we should have balance. And during the holiday season, we are anything but balanced. Excuse me, I have to drink some water. We are anything but balanced. We're usually doing way too much of everything, basically. We spend too much, we eat too much, we eat too many pastries and sweets, we drink too much alcohol, we probably have too many people in our house, just a whole lot of hustle and bustle, and a whole lot of too much of everything. And it just creates havoc. That's a lot of, I remember hearing this therapist say one time that a lot of times, even though you're not the one busy and doing all kind of stuff, if there's a lot of people around you doing all that, it can create anxiety in some people. You could be sitting there on the couch doing nothing, but if everybody around you is just doing stuff and moving fast and all stressed out and doing all these things, like, it can cause anxiety. And that happens a whole lot during the holidays. Like, everybody's doing that, and there certainly isn't any balance in it. But even though we're all sad about not being able to do our traditional holiday things that we do because of social distancing and all that, hopefully it helps people to just kind of sit back and reflect and think about things, and think about, should we be doing all these things? Do we need to be doing all these things? So hopefully it would just kind of help us all think about balance and moderation and things like that. So a couple of tips that I have. The first tip, number one, I have is to do things in moderation. If you have diabetes, don't be overeating. I've worked at a hospital. I retired this year, but for 38 years, we used to see so many people come into the ER around the holidays with these high blood sugars and high blood pressure. Basically, they just like ate themselves sick. And so, just don't overdo it with the eating. If you have an alcohol problem, don't let the holidays be an excuse for you to fall off the wagon. If your finances are tight, don't let other people's expectations cause you to spend too much. I was guilty of that for so many years. Just, spending bill money to buy a gift. We get kind of ridiculous sometimes. So tip number one, do things in moderation. Again, whether it's your health or finances or, excuse me, spending too much, whatever it is. Um, Tip number two is, I know that a lot of us are tired and burned out and have cabin fever due to social distancing, but we should be safe. So tip number two is social distancing. Um, but don't let it be stressful for you. We're just trying to be safe. We're trying to keep everybody healthy. If you have an elderly family member, it's just a good idea to try. I know that some people will go ahead and have family gatherings, but just try to be safe, especially if you have elderly family members there. Like I said, I was a nurse for 38 years and I worked at a hospital my whole career, except maybe like 1 year of that time. And so hospitals never close, which meant that, we have to work weekends and holidays in addition to all the regular weekdays. So I missed a whole bunch of Thanksgivings and Christmases and Easter and Mother's Day where I had to work. I couldn't be with my family. But guess what? Like, we all survived. Me and my family survived. And we always know next year, if I work Christmas this year, then I know that I'm going to be off Christmas next year. So we had to alternate the holidays. And so the same for us this year. We're missing our loved ones this year. We're missing our family, but we know that next year it'll be different. And, we should be able to get this thing under control where we can celebrate. So if the social distancing and not seeing your family is causing you stress, then just find other ways to celebrate. Have a family Zoom call, have a family Zoom party. Um, you know, Believe me, missing one holiday is a small price to pay rather than getting someone sick. And it's hard. I have three grandchildren. Two of them live on the East Coast. I haven't seen them since February, and we normally see each other like every 3 months. I think prior to the pandemic, we probably 6 months was the longest, and I haven't seen them since February. It's killing all of us. I have a brand new grandbaby who lives here on the West Coast, but in Oregon, like another state, that I would be, visiting all the time if it wasn't for this pandemic. It is very hurtful, it's very stressful, but I know that safety is the key. So I have to deal with it. Tip number two is, it's okay to say no. So, like I said earlier, me and my husband both have a problem with that. But I talked about him getting a little bit anxious because he didn't want to say no, but it's okay to say no. I am really, really learning that lesson. And a lot of times what you think people are going to say, or you think how people are going to react if you say no, normally that doesn't even happen. And if it's helping you stay stay sane and not stressed, then even if they do react in a certain way, oh well, they have to deal with it, because we have to take care of ourselves. I'm like really into self-care and self-love, because I pretty much crumbled beginning of this year, and I am learning that I have to say no, and then be realistic with your yeses along with that, because a lot of times I will say yes to something and I'll realize that I've overextended myself and I'm tired and I don't want to do it, but now I've said yes, so I have to go ahead and push and do it anyway. But we just if you have that problem, it's a learning curve, but we can do it. We can all work on saying no if it's something that we really can't do, or really don't want to do, or really don't feel comfortable doing. So tip number four is to be kind, patient, and understanding. I wish I had thought about this. I'm looking back with my brother, like all these years of us thinking, that there was some other reason why he didn't want to come. And we just never really know what somebody's going through. I hear this all the time and I understand it now. I just wish I had known it many, many years ago, with dealing with my brother. I think I've always been kind and patient and understanding to people, but it's mainly people who I know that's going through something. And so now I'm really trying to extend that to anybody, because even though somebody may be showing up or smiling or, coming around, they may be hurting inside, or they may be anxious inside, they may be stressed inside, and we don't know it. So I just think if we practice being kind and patient and understanding, maybe even some of those family arguments at the barbecue. Maybe some of those things can be avoided if we practice kindness and understanding and don't assume. I said earlier, I assume my husband always wanted to say the prayer. I assume my brother didn't want to come for some other reason. But so I think I would add assumption in there. So be kind, patient, understanding, and not assuming that we know what's going on with the other person. And I think that can decrease stress everywhere, with everyone, especially people who are dealing with anxiety. And tip number 5, if you suffer with seasonal affective disorder or seasonal depression, make sure you keep an appointment with your therapist or psychiatrist. They can check your vitamin D levels to make sure they're sufficient, and they can order supplements for you. There's vitamin D over the counter, but if your vitamin D levels are really, really low, which it is in some people who live in those northern states, they can give you a prescription vitamin D, which it has a lot. I can't remember how many units. I want to say 20,000 units, but I'm not sure. But like the regular over-counter vitamin D you can get only has like 2,000, but you can get a prescription one. It's like 5,000, or maybe it's not 20,000, but maybe 5,000. I don't know, but I do know that you can get a prescription for vitamin D, a high dose, to get you caught up, and that will help. And then also, like people who have the seasonal affective disorder, you can get vitamin D, and they also have like this light. It's a light that you can sit under, and to help you get some ultraviolet light. And then they have sleep therapy, so they kind of train you and give you different hours of sleep to match the season and the sunset and sunrise times. So basically, just don't suffer alone. Some people don't even know they have it, but that's why keeping a log or a journal is really good, because you can kind of see patterns and kind of be like, dang, you know what, last year around the end of November, I felt like this, and maybe it's something going on. Maybe it's not just anxiety about Thanksgiving. Maybe there's something else going on. So tip number 5 is, if you have seasonal affective disorder, or if you think you have it, to check with your therapist or psychiatrist. And then tip number 6 is, I kind of talked about this a little bit just now, but tip number 6 is to write down or keep a journal or a log on how your mood is, whether it's good or bad. And you might want to keep 2 of them, one for things that stress you out, and one that's for things that make you happy. And if you have seasonal depression and you don't know it, like I said, this is a way for you to kind of find out, excuse me, to see if there's a pattern. It's like, every year, 4 days before Christmas, I'm like stressed out and tired, and I feel down. If you think about it, 4 days before Christmas is the 21st, and on the 21st is the first day of winter. So maybe it's the seasons. Maybe it's not just the holidays. It could be, it could be the winter season, or 3 months of this fall season, and now we're starting to winter, and it's just too much for some people, or maybe their vitamin D levels have gotten low. So a journal or a log can help you see that. I mean, if it's seasonal, you may have to keep your log until the next year to compare the 2 years, but at least you'll start to see like a pattern. And the other good thing about a log, how I said to write down your good stress and your bad stress, is because stress can be good or bad. So keeping a log of both can help you identify where your stress is coming from. For example, before the pandemic anyway, I noticed that I had back pain really bad in October and February. And usually by February, I would end up in the emergency room and have to get a Toradol shot or a steroid shot. And I just thought it was because it was a cold weather. October's in the fall, February's in the winter. And I just thought it was weather. But one day when I was talking to my doctor and we were looking at my chart of the pattern, I realized that usually in October and February, I'm usually on the East Coast visiting my grandchildren. So it's colder there than California, but also I'm picking up my grandkids a whole lot, not to mention like the hustle and bustle of traveling and rushing around and suitcases and all that. And so even though this is something I want to do, even though this is something good for me to do, good for my grandchildren. It's a good stressor. However, it's kind of seasonal. There's a pattern here. And so I just realized I had to make some adjustments to make sure that my back stayed healthy while I was visiting them, because I love visiting them. But I'm just saying all that to say that keeping a log and kind of watching for patterns is really helpful in determining if you have seasonal stress going on or some holiday stress going on. So tip number 7 is, if you do find yourself anxious during this time, use calming techniques. A lot of people don't want to go to the doctor because they feel like the doctor's just going to give them meds, or I don't know. A lot of people don't want to go to the doctor, but if you're keeping a log and you can kind of anticipate when you start feeling a certain way, if you're getting stressed and anxious, you can use other calming techniques like going for a walk, doing some meditation, doing some yoga, taking a nap, dancing, taking a bubble bath, sitting on the patio drinking hot tea. That's what I do a lot. Just whatever you can do to make you smile and laugh and de-stress, And if you don't know what those things are, just try to take some time and figure that out. And some of you might think it's weird for me to say if you don't know what those things are. The reason I say that is because sometimes you can get yourself so wrapped up in busyness and stress that you forget what you love to do. That has happened to me before. You literally forget what is going to calm you down, what's going to make you smile, what's going to make you relax. You just get so caught up in it. And so that's why I'm saying, if you don't know what those are, just take some time and just think about it, figure out what those things are. And then number 8, I have back to the basics. I talk about this all the time. So the basics are: get enough sleep, eat healthy, meat, fruit, and vegetables, decrease your fast food intake, and decrease what I call the devil, which is sugar. I'm a sugar addict. I have a hard time with my sugar intake. And it's so crazy because I know it's an addiction, because I know that I feel bad when I eat a lot of sugar. My joint pain goes through the roof when I eat a lot of sugar. But man, why do I eat it then? If I know it's going to cause me pain, why do I eat it? So that's one of my struggles. But I do know that when you're sleeping well, when you're eating well, and decreasing fast food and sugar, I feel healthier. I know when I read articles, other people feel healthier. When I go to support groups, other people say they're healthier. So it's in the literature. We know that some of these things are bad for us, and we know what's good for us. And so we just have to go back to that. And then tip number 9 is, in addition to the basics, there's a lot of alternative modalities now to help decrease stress, like yoga and Tai Chi and Reiki and meditation. There's a lot of things out there that are non-invasive and not, no medicine, that can help you calm and decrease your stress. So, excuse me, tip number 10, I put that maybe this should have been number 1, but get help if you need it. The sooner the better. So I've heard people say they don't want to go to the doctor. The doctors don't know what they're talking about, or they just always put you on meds, or I have a hard time finding a good doctor. But if you need help, you need help. And so, like I said just now, meds aren't the only way, and the doctors aren't always going to give you meds. They'll probably try therapy first. And with therapy, there's talk therapy, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's several other therapies that they use that give you coping skills on how to you can get coping skills on how to deal with stress and anxiety and holiday stress, seasonal stress, family stress. There are other ways that they can help you with all of these things. And a lot of times it's coping skills, maybe things you haven't thought about. They just teach you how to cope, and they'll try things like that before they just throw you on medications. A good doctor will assess you and try things like that, unless you're just, unless they feel like you really, really, really need some medication. But please, please, please get help if you need it. Don't wait until things are, too bad with your stress level. So anyway, I just wanted to say that really, really quick. Like I said, the holiday season is almost over. This year is almost over, but we do have 3 more months of winter. We are still in this pandemic. We are still distanced from our family. And so there's still a lot of chance that a lot of us are going to be anxious. And I just hope that these tips, these are just some very, very basic tips, but I just hope that these tips can help some of you decrease your holiday and seasonal stress, and maybe even decrease just your stress from the year of 2020, in the pandemic. And stress is serious. Stress can cause anxiety and depression, and anxiety and depression are actual mental illness diagnosis, and that's where your stress goes. You can get burned out, and then it can go to stress, and then it can lead to anxiety and depression, and we just don't want that. We want to nip it in the bud before it goes that far. So if we know since we know that the potential is anxiety and depression, we can prepare by taking some of these healthy steps that I've mentioned. Just, encouraging sleep, eating well, and getting professional help if you need it, so that we can get through the fall and winter and holiday season, and just take some time to enjoy it more, and look at it from a joyous occasion and a healthy occasion, instead of just running into it, hustle and bustle, spending money, eating and drinking, and then in January we're all sick and broke. So I'm just hoping that Caregivers Haven podcast today will help you to not end up sick and stressed and broke. So that was the whole purpose of today. So I really hope that it was helpful for some of you, and I hope you all have a happy holiday and stay safe. And I will see you next month. So please hold for some important announcements.
Sandra is a registered nurse, and many of her guests are healthcare professionals. However, this is not a professional podcast, nor are we associated with any mental health counseling. Please seek help with a professional provider if needed. You can reach Sandra by listening to the podcast on the Anchor app and leaving a message there, or you can DM her on Instagram at Caregivers Haven. If you enjoy listening to Caregivers Haven podcast, please favorite, subscribe, or follow on your listening platform.
Okay, guys, thank you for listening. And until next time, Caregivers Haven is wishing you peace of mind.
You can find Sandra on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Caregivers Haven. If you enjoy listening to Caregivers Haven podcast, please share, subscribe, follow, and favorite.